Ridgewood Elementary was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. Nestled in a quiet suburban town in Oregon, the school was known for its dedicated teachers, energetic students, and an old-fashioned charm that made it feel like something out of a storybook. The walls were decorated with colorful student art, and each season brought themed hallways, pumpkins in fall, snowflakes in winter, and bright sunbursts in spring. That week, it was all about art. Art Week was one of Ridgewood's most beloved traditions. Students from all grades created pieces that were proudly hung in the hallways, transforming the school into a makeshift gallery. Parents, teachers, and even local community members came by to admire the creativity. There were sculptures made of recycled materials, papier-mâché animals, and even a life-size cutout of Abraham Lincoln made entirely of popsicle sticks. But the centerpiece of the display was an enormous, decades-old mural that hung just outside the school library. Painted by an alumni class in the 1980s, the mural featured a peaceful forest scene with children reading books under a giant oak tree. The paint had faded slightly over the years, but it still held a nostalgic place in the hearts of faculty. On that Monday morning, students buzzed with energy. Laughter echoed through the halls as classes prepared for the opening of the art showcase. Principal Wilkins, a firm but kind woman with short gray hair and a knack for remembering every student's name, made sure everything was running smoothly. Among the day's planned activities was a special guest appearance, Officer Daniels, from the local police department, who was bringing along his canine partner, Rex, for a school safety demonstration. Officer Daniels had been visiting schools in the district for years. His friendly demeanor and well-trained German Shepherd always left students fascinated. Rex was not just a canine officer. He was a local celebrity. Known for his calm presence and sharp instincts, he had assisted in several key investigations over the years. Daniels often joked that Rex was the real officer in their duo. Exactly 10 a.m. Daniels and Rex arrived at the front doors. Students pressed their faces to the glass, cheering as the big dog trotted proudly by his handler's side. The gymnasium had been set up for the presentation, but first, the pair were scheduled for a short walkthrough to greet students in their classrooms. As Daniels and Rex made their way down the main hallway, everything seemed completely ordinary. Children peeked through open doors, teachers waved, and Rex, ever composed, sniffed casually at lockers and backpacks. Then something unexpected happened. As they passed the old mural near the library, Rex stopped in his tracks. Daniels paused, glancing down. "What is it, buddy?" Rex's ears perked up, and his body tensed. He began sniffing the bottom corner of the mural, aggressively. Within seconds, he let out a low growl, a deep, guttural sound that made everyone in earshot go silent. Daniels tugged gently at the leash, but Rex wouldn't budge. Instead, he began pawing at the wall, his growls growing more intense. A crowd began to gather. Nearby teachers stepped closer, some holding back curious students. Principal Wilkins hurried over, alarmed by the sudden disturbance. "What's going on?" she asked. Daniels crouched beside Rex. "He's reacting to something behind the mural," he said, puzzled. "This isn't normal behavior for him, not unless he's picking up a very strong scent." Wilkins frowned, her gaze shifting to the mural. "That painting's been here since I was in high school," she muttered. "There's nothing back there, just a wall." But Rex didn't agree. His paws were scratching more frantically now, and his snout kept darting underneath the canvas's edge. Daniels stood. "Ma'am, with your permission, I think we should take a look." There was a long pause. The hallway had fallen completely. Silent. Dozens of little eyes looked up at the principal, waiting to see what she'd say. Finally, Wilkins nodded. "All right. But be careful." Daniels turned back to Rex, unclipped the leash, and carefully lifted the edge of the mural. That decision would change everything. Officer Daniels gently peeled back the bottom corner of the mural, exposing the chipped plaster wall behind it. The canvas creaked as it separated from the staples that had held it to the frame for years. A thin layer of dust floated into the air. Students leaned in, eyes wide, barely breathing. Teachers kept them at a distance, but even the adults were too curious to look away. Rex surged forward the moment the canvas gave way. His powerful snout shoved beneath the loose cloth, and he let out another bark sharper, more urgent this time. Without hesitation, the dog bit into the fabric and yanked hard. The entire bottom section of the mural tore away with a loud rip that echoed down the hallway. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Principal Wilkins winced as she watched decades of school history get shredded in seconds. "Oh no, that was a donation from the class of '84, she murmured. But she didn't stop Daniels. Something about Rex's behavior made it clear. This was more than just a torn piece of art. Rex didn't pause. His claws scraped against the drywall as he scratched and barked at a particular spot near the bottom. Right. Daniels crouched beside him and brushed away more dust. That's when he noticed something odd. The wall didn't look even. A thin horizontal line, almost invisible, ran across the base of the mural space, and in one section, the paint had bubbled and cracked, revealing something metallic beneath. "Hold him for a second," Daniels told a nearby teacher, handing over Rex's leash gently. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt and used the edge to pry at the loose section of plaster. With a few careful scrapes, something shiny peeked through. He reached in and tugged. Out came a small rusted metal box, no larger than a lunchbox. It was wrapped in decaying fabric, stained and brittle from years of hiding. The moment he held it up, the hallway fell completely silent. "What is that?" whispered a fourth-grade girl. Daniels placed the box on the hallway bench and carefully opened it. A musty scent wafted out. Inside were several old papers yellowed with age folded neatly into tight rectangles. A sealed envelope with handwriting on it read, "If found, read this first." Underneath the papers was something unexpected. A hand-drawn map, the ink faded but still legible, with circles and arrows pointing to something below the school. This looks like a treasure map," someone said jokingly. Daniels didn't laugh. He recognized something else inside the box, what looked like a school blueprint, or at least a floor plan. He laid the map across his lap, brushing off flakes of age. "This is a layout of the school," he muttered, tracing it with his finger. "But this section here, this doesn't exist anymore." Wilkins leaned over his shoulder. That part of the building was renovated in the late '60s. The old basement and boiler room were sealed. The original stairwell was removed during construction. Daniels looked up slowly. "Then this may be pointing to something that's been hidden for over 50 years. Rex barked again, tail wagging with intensity. His nose kept pointing toward the floor, then back to the wall. Students whispered excitedly. One boy whispered to his friend, "Maybe it's buried treasure, or a secret lab." Wilkins shook her head slowly. "No one's been down there since I was a teenager." Daniels stood and handed the box to her. "We need to take a closer look at this. I'll alert the department and bring in someone from the Historical Society. But if this map is real, there may be more than just old papers waiting down there." Rex sat quietly now, his job for the moment done, his eyes still fixed on the broken mural. He had sensed something that had been hidden for decades. Behind the art that thousands had walked past every day, but none had ever looked behind it. Until now. The rusted metal box was now the center of attention at Ridgewood Elementary. After Officer Daniels carefully packed it up, he brought it into the main office, followed closely by Principal Wilkins and a small trail of curious staff. Rex walked proudly behind them, still alert, as if guarding a great secret. The once cheerful school day had turned into a swirl of whispers, excited speculation, and wide-eyed curiosity. Inside the office, Daniels laid the box out on a conference table. A few of the more weathered documents were removed carefully and placed in protective sleeves from the school's archival cabinet. Thankfully, the school secretary, Miss Hargrove, was a local history buff and had dealt with fragile papers before. She handled them like treasure. The sealed envelope, marked, "If found, read this first," was placed delicately in front of Principal Wilkins. She hesitated. "Should I open it?" Officer Daniels nodded. "If it's related to this property, or a potential safety concern, yes." Wilkins slipped her finger under the flap and unfolded the yellowing paper. Her eyes scanned quickly, then widened. "It's from Harold Bixby," she whispered. Daniels raised a brow. "The teacher who went missing?" Wilkins nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "This is his handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. He taught 6th grade history until he disappeared in 1967. She held up the letter and read aloud. "To whoever finds this, if you're reading this, then something I feared may have come true. I found something beneath Ridgewood. I've hidden the map in case I vanish before I can share what I discovered. The lower level holds more than storage. Be careful. Not everyone wanted this secret known. Harold Bixby." The room fell silent. Daniels leaned forward, eyes narrowed. What exactly did he find? And why hide it? Miss Hargrove spread out the hand-drawn map on the table. It matched the school's original layout, but a section beneath the library was marked with red ink. A side note scribbled in the corner read, "Hidden door behind storage pipes, boiler room level old stairs. Removed during 1963 expansion." Wilkins looked over the map. That entire wing was closed off during the renovation. They built the new science labs above it. Daniels tapped the map. "If there's something still down there, we'll need permission to explore it. This could be a safety hazard or a historical find." By early afternoon, the school board was informed, and a small meeting was held in the principal's office. Due to the nature of the discovery, they agreed to allow a limited investigation, starting the next morning, led by Officer Daniels, with Wilkins, Miss Hargrove, and the school maintenance supervisor joining the effort. No students would be involved for safety reasons. Meanwhile, the story had begun to spread. Parents texted each other about the box behind the painting. Some believed it was a hoax. Others thought it might involve buried money or government secrets. One outlandish rumor claimed Ridgewood had been built on a hidden military site. Though most brushed it off, a few remembered the quiet disappearance of Mr. Bixby and how the school never fully explained it. By the end of the school day, the mood in the halls had changed. Students whispered to each other in excited tones. Teachers speculated quietly in the staff lounge. And Rex? He sat near the mural, still watchful, like he knew the job wasn't over. That night, Daniels reviewed the map again at home. Something about it unsettled him. Why would a teacher hide a map and write a warning about a basement? And what was so important that someone would want to keep it hidden for over 50 years? He glanced down at Rex, who lay at his feet. The dog's ears twitched, and his eyes remained fixed on the folded map on the floor. Tomorrow, they would go into the basement, and whatever waited down there, it had been waiting a long, long time. By the following morning, Ridgewood Elementary felt less like a school and more like the set of a mystery film. The news of the hidden box had traveled fast. Teachers arrived early, exchanging theories over coffee. Students begged for answers from anyone who looked like they knew more than the headlines. But it was in the principal's office where the real unraveling began. Local historian Margaret Carson had been called in to examine the documents. A retired librarian with a deep knowledge of the town's forgotten corners she wore horn-rimmed glasses and a tweed jacket with elbow patches. As she delicately handled the aged documents, her eyes lit with recognition. "I can't believe this," she murmured. "This is really Harold Bixby's handwriting. I've seen it in the school archives, and I even met him once years ago when I was a student." Officer Daniels leaned in. "What do you remember about him?" Carson took a breath. He was quiet but brilliant, always reading, always asking questions no one else thought to ask. He believed the school was built over something old, something important. Some thought he meant Native American sites. Others assumed he meant architectural secrets. But then one day, he just vanished. Disappeared? Wilkins asked, surprised. Completely. Left school one Friday in 1967 and never returned on Monday. His house was untouched. His car was in the driveway. There were no signs of a struggle. No notes, nothing. Police investigated, but there were no leads. The district eventually declared him missing. Daniels tapped the map. "And now, we've got a letter from him, warning about something beneath the school." Carson nodded solemnly. "This is the first clue in nearly 60 years. He must have known he was in danger. That's why he hid the box." They turned their attention to the map again. It showed a route through what used to be the boiler room. Level. That section had been sealed off during renovations in the 1960s, replaced by new science labs and storage closets. But if Bixby's map was accurate, the original stairwell might still be hidden behind newer walls or fixtures. The school maintenance supervisor Frank Boyd joined the team and studied the drawing with a furrowed brow. "You know," he said slowly, "there's an odd little utility room behind the janitor's closet on the east wing. No blueprints ever showed it. Just a sealed metal door we were told not to mess with back in the day." Daniels and Wilkins exchanged a glance. "Could that be it?" "Could be," Frank replied. "We'll find out." By noon, the investigative team Daniels, Rex, Wilkins, Carson, and Frank were walking down the east corridor. Students watched curiously from their classrooms as Rex trotted confidently ahead. Occasionally sniffing the air dot at the end of the hallway, Frank unlocked a narrow door that led to an old janitor's closet. Inside was a storage shelf of dusty mops, unused brooms, and cleaning solution. Tucked behind it was a rust-colored metal panel embedded in the wall. "There," Frank said, pointing. "We never had the key to that." Daniels stepped forward and tapped the surface. It gave a faint, hollow echo. "This is no ordinary wall," he said. "This is a hatch." Using a crowbar, Daniels and Frank pried it open with some resistance. With a screech of metal, the hatch gave way, revealing a tight, dark stairwell leading down into the unknown. Everyone stood still for a moment. Then Rex barked once and descended the first step without hesitation. Carson clutched the envelope from the box tightly. "Whatever Harold Bixby found, it's down there." Wilkins swallowed hard. "Let's find out." One by one, they followed Rex into the darkness. Each step echoed with a sense of history finally being unearthed. The stairwell was cold, stale, and silent, as if untouched for decades. And at the bottom, something waited, something Mr. Bixby had found, and someone else had tried to hide. The stairwell groaned beneath their feet as the group descended deeper into the earth, each step feeling heavier than the last. The old metal rails were rusted, and cobwebs hung like curtains across the narrow path. Officer Daniels led the way. With a flashlight in hand, Rex walking just ahead, his ears perked and his body tense. The others followed closely, Principal Wilkins, Margaret Carson, and Frank Boyd, each holding their breath as they entered territory no one had seen in decades. Air turned colder and thicker the further they went. The walls were damp with moisture, and the scent of mildew filled their lungs. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The staircase finally ended at a solid concrete platform facing an old steel door. It was large, with a thick bolt mechanism. Across the center, sealed tightly. "This has to be it," Daniels whispered. Carson shined her flashlight across the top. A small rusted plaque, barely visible under grime, read, "Property of the Ridgewood Civil Emergency Authority. 1962. Wilkins frowned. "Civil Emergency Authority? That's not part of any school department." Daniels turned to Carson, who looked equally baffled. Could it be related to the Cold War? He asked. Carson nodded slowly. "It's possible. In the early 60s, many schools were used for civil defense shelters. But most of those records were lost or buried when the program shut down." Frank examined the locking mechanism. "We'll need tools. That's a military-grade bolt." Daniels pulled a pry bar from his bag and got to work. It took several minutes, but with a loud clunk and a heavy groan, the bolt finally slid free. The hinges shrieked as the heavy steel door creaked open, revealing absolute darkness inside. Rex stepped forward, tail wagging slowly but alert. Daniels raised his flashlight and stepped in first. The beam revealed a long concrete room about the size of a classroom. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with dusty crates, gas masks, emergency water cans, and rusted flashlights. Along one side stood a row of metal lockers labeled medical, food rations, and radio. "This is a fallout shelter," Carson said, almost breathless. "Built during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But this one, it was never on public records." Wilkins stepped inside cautiously, running her hand along the edge of a shelf. "Why? Would the school board hide something like this?" "Maybe they didn't know," Carson replied. "If it was a federal or state project kept quiet, only a few people might have been informed. Bixby must have found it during the 1963 construction, and someone didn't want him to expose it." Daniels moved toward a small desk at the far end. A thick binder covered in plastic was lying in the center. He opened it to find hundreds of typed documents, many stamped confidential or restricted use. Some pages were handwritten. Logs detailing stored inventory and communications records. Most curious of all was a folder labeled Site Alpha, Ridgewood Test Zone. "Test Zone?" Daniels muttered. He opened the folder and skimmed the first page. "This says Ridgewood was selected as a potential location for an underground shelter, capable of housing up to 100 people in the event of a nuclear emergency. Supplies were prepped for long-term survival. But the project was abandoned before completion." Carson leaned in. This is a piece of forgotten American history." As they explored the chamber, the pieces of the mystery came together. Harold Bixby must have stumbled upon this hidden shelter during the 1960s renovation. Realizing its secrecy and potential danger, he documented everything. But before he could share it with the public, he vanished. Rex sniffed around a locker, then barked. Daniels opened it and found an old leather briefcase inside. Within it, another stack of notes. Bixby's handwriting. The final piece of the puzzle might lie inside. As Daniels began reading the first page, a chill went through. The room. Mr. Bixby hadn't just found a shelter. He had discovered something he wasn't meant to. The silence in the underground chamber grew heavier as Officer Daniels gently unfolded the first page of Mr. Bixby's notes. The paper was brittle, the ink faded in places, but the handwriting was unmistakably the same as the letter from the metal box. Daniels read the top line aloud. "If anyone finds these notes, know that what lies beneath Ridgewood Elementary was not intended for children nor for education." Margaret Carson exchanged a look with Principal Wilkins. "What on earth does that mean?" Daniels read further. Bixby had discovered the shelter in 1967 by accident during a routine inspection of the boiler system. He had followed strange blueprints that didn't match the school's existing layout. One day, while replacing a pipe behind the utility wall, he uncovered a sealed stairwell, what they had just found decades later. Intrigued, he returned alone several times, mapping the underground bunker. What he found disturbed him. Bixby's. Notes described multiple references to behavioral test conditions, child compliance scenarios, and something labeled Project Echo. According to his journal, the shelter hadn't just been built for emergencies. It had allegedly been designed to observe how children reacted in confined, high-stress environments over long periods. Though no actual tests appeared to have taken place, Bixby suspected the site had been prepared for government use under extreme Cold War paranoia. He believed this place was meant to become an experimental site, Daniels said, stunned. Not just a shelter. Carson nodded slowly. In the 1960s, there were rumors about hidden government studies, psychological readiness for nuclear survival, social structure under stress. But we all assumed they were myths. Principal Wilkins looked horrified. And it was under a school? That's unthinkable. Daniels opened more folders from the metal desk. Many were standard inventory logs, but some bore coded references and red stamps reading classified, internal only. There were even blank student evaluation forms, age, gender, learning level clearly never filled in. If Project Echo had ever become active, children could have unknowingly become test subjects. It looks like it was prepped, but never activated, Daniels said. They must have canceled it before it started. Maybe due to ethical concerns, maybe politics. But they left everything here, and no one was told. Carson leaned over the desk, pointing to the last page of Bixby's notes. Look here. It read, I fear someone knows I found this place. There have been men in suits asking questions, watching me. If I disappear, it won't be of my own will. Everyone went silent. Then he didn't just vanish, Wilkins said. He was silenced. Daniels took a deep breath. He hid the map and notes behind the mural, hoping someday someone would find them. Carson wiped her glasses. He wasn't just a teacher. He was a whistleblower. He gave everything to try to reveal the truth. Just then, Rex let out a low growl. He had wandered into the back corner of the room and was sniffing intensely at what looked like a panel behind a rusted supply shelf. Daniels moved quickly, clearing the way. The panel was unlike the other shiny, newer, possibly installed after the rest of the room had been abandoned. He found a hidden latch, opened it, and discovered a narrow duct with electrical wiring leading into the foundation. A small speaker was mounted inside, long dead, but marked with a serial number and a sticker labeled Active Comms -1966. Daniels stepped back. There may have been surveillance down here. Wilkins looked pale. You're telling me someone could have been listening to the school above? To students? No way to know if it was ever connected, Daniels replied, but they planned for it. The team backed away slowly, the weight of what they had uncovered sinking in. This wasn't just a forgotten shelter. It was a fragment of Cold War paranoia abandoned. Yes, but built with intentions that chilled them to the core. And had it not been for Rex, it might have stayed buried forever. By the following day, the school was buzzing louder than ever. News of the hidden shelter beneath Ridgewood Elementary had spread rapidly, first among teachers and parents, then through local media, and now across the nation. Reporters camped outside the school, trying to catch a glimpse of the mysterious underground chamber and the now famous K-9 who uncovered it. And at the center of it all stood Rex, calm as ever, oblivious to the spotlight he had just stepped into. Ridgewood had never made national headlines before. Overnight, it had become a symbol of hidden truths and rediscovered history. But it was Rex who captured hearts. Children made signs with his name. Parents brought homemade treats. Students wore stickers with paw prints. To them, Rex wasn't just a police dog, he was a four-legged detective, a furry hero who sniffed out the truth when no one else could. The town's mayor quickly declared a school-wide assembly in Rex's honor. The gymnasium filled to the brim as students, teachers, parents, and officials gathered to pay tribute. Principal Wilkins stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, with Rex sitting loyally at Officer Daniels' side. "We're here today not only to recognize an extraordinary discovery," she began, "but to celebrate a hero who reminded us that sometimes the truth is hidden right in front of us, and all it takes is someone brave enough to dig deeper." Applause filled the gym. Rex barked once, almost on cue, drawing laughter and cheers from the students. Officer Daniels took the mic next. "Rex has always had great instincts. He's helped us track missing persons, detect threats, and keep our community safe. But this was different. He sensed something no one else could. Without him, the story of Harold Bixby may never have seen the light of day. And what's buried beneath our school might have stayed buried forever." Mayor Ellis stepped forward to present Rex with a shiny collar medallion that read, "Rex, Ridgewood's hero." Daniels crouched down, clipped it onto the dog's collar, and gave him a firm pat. Rex licked his face in return, completely unaware of the standing ovation echoing through the gym. But the celebration wasn't just about recognition, it was about remembrance. Principal Wilkins unveiled a new project at the assembly, a permanent mural to honor both Rex and Mr. Harold Bixby. The mural would be painted on the very wall where the original artwork had been torn, the same place where the mystery had begun. Students would help design it, combining the image of Rex with pages from Bixby's journals, maps, and a depiction of the hidden chamber. "This mural will be more than art," Wilkins said. "It will be a reminder that courage, even when unrecognized, can shape the future." In the days that followed, a group of teachers and students turned the underground chamber into a historical exhibit. With guidance from Margaret Carson and the local historical society, they restored parts of the shelter, installed lighting, and created educational plaques. It would now serve as a learning space, part museum, part memorial. Students toured it during history lessons. Parents visited during school events. What was once a secret became a source of pride and knowledge. Officer Daniels continued his regular duties, but everywhere he went, people stopped to thank him and to pet Rex. The once ordinary canine was now featured in newspapers, TV segments, and even a local children's book titled Rex and the Secret Schoolroom. Despite all the attention, Rex remained the same loyal, alert, and ready for duty. But for Ridgewood, he had become something much more. He was a symbol of truth, of loyalty, of a mystery solved by instinct and heart. And as he trotted through the halls of Ridgewood, tail wagging proudly, the children who once walked past an old painting without a second glance now saw every wall, every corner, and every silence with new eyes. All because one dog refused to walk past a secret that wanted to be found. Months passed, and Ridgewood Elementary School settled into a new rhythm, one shaped by curiosity, pride, and a deeper awareness of its own hidden past. What began as an ordinary school year had turned into a life-changing event for students, staff, and the entire town. And it all started because one dog refused to ignore a strange scent behind a forgotten painting. The newly restored underground chamber, now called the Bixby Room, became a centerpiece for education. Students were taken on guided tours that felt more like time travel. Inside, they saw the shelter's iron bunks, the communication panel, and the notebooks Harold Bixby had left behind. Teachers wove lessons about the Cold War, civil defense, and ethical history into their curriculum. But more than dates and facts, they taught students about bravery, the kind that Bixby had shown, and the kind Rex had sparked by digging deeper. a bronze plaque was installed just outside the chamber's entrance. It read, "In honor of Harold Bixby, who saw the truth and tried to share it," and to Rex, whose loyalty reminded us never to stop searching. Children from all grades would pause to read the plaque, some even placing paper drawings of Rex next to it as tributes. His story inspired essays, projects, and even a short student documentary that went on to win a statewide award. Officer Daniels, though still humble about the ordeal, was invited to speak at schools across the district. He brought Rex with him, of course, who proudly wore his medal and posed patiently for countless photos. Daniels told the story not as a wild mystery, but as a lesson in following instincts, respecting the past, and listening to the voiceless, whether human or canine. Ripple effect went far beyond Ridgewood. State archivists visited the Bixby Room and verified its Cold War ties. They launched an initiative to investigate other potential hidden bunkers beneath public buildings from the 1950s and 60s. It turned out that Ridgewood's shelter was one of the most well-preserved ever found. Local universities sent anthropology and history students to study the site. Even the Smithsonian made inquiries about borrowing some of the safer artifacts for a Cold War exhibit. Margaret Carson, who had first followed Rex through the torn painting, was now working with a museum grant to co-author a book titled Echoes. Beneath Our Feet, The Forgotten Bunkers of America. Principal Wilkins, once overwhelmed by the chaos, now embraced the school's fame. She led with a renewed sense of purpose and pride. This school was never just about math and reading, she told a regional news outlet. It became about discovery, about truth, about remembering those who dared to speak it. And at the heart of that transformation was Rex. Every morning, students still waited by the front doors just to see him walk in beside Daniels. Some brought treats, others drawings, and one even tried to knit him a scarf. Rex, unfazed by celebrity, remained focused, his nose twitching at every sound, every scent. But he'd pause to let the kids scratch his head or pat his back before heading into the office like clockwork. When winter came, Ridgewood held a community event called Rex Day. Families gathered in the snow to honor their hero. Children built snow dog statues. A local bakery handed out paw-shaped cookies. The mayor unveiled a life-sized statue of Rex at the school's front entrance, sitting upright, ears perked, alert forever. As the snow fell that evening and laughter echoed across the schoolyard, Officer Daniels looked down at his partner. "You changed everything, buddy," he whispered, smiling. Rex wagged his tail. Some stories begin with mystery. Others begin with heroes. Ridgewood's story had both. But what made it unforgettable was how a silent painting, a curious dog, and an old teacher's courage came together to remind an entire town that even long-buried secrets can rise to the surface if someone dares to look. And sometimes all it takes is a nose that knows.